What is going on, everyone? Today we are going to discuss partial repetitions, why you may or may not want to do them, what they are trying to accomplish, where you could put them into your program, and when you would maybe want to do them. Let's get started. All right, so before we dive into the nitty-gritty on how you can or maybe should implement this into your training, let's first define what a partial repetition is. And I'll use the bicep curl as a visualization. It's just an easy demonstration. So in normal range of motion or full range of motion would be completing the full range of motion or movement that you have access to and that those joints and muscles are able to perform. A partial range of motion is essentially anything that's not full range of motion, and that could be of a varying degree. So for example, back to the bicep curl, you could do partial reps in a small range of motion like that. You could do a half range of motion. You could do a 3/4 range of motion. As long as that full range of motion is not being met or performed, it would technically be considered a partial rep or partial repetitions. All right, now that we know what partial repetitions are, let's go over where they would end up in a training program, and then we'll go into the when and why. So there's really two main scenarios in when partial range of motion will be put into effect. And a great example is for powerlifters. So let's say you're doing a bench press, and the part where you struggle the most is that last little lockout. And you might have seen this in a gym that you train at or videos, etc., where someone will maybe do either a block bench or a towel bench where they have something or someone put a towel, a pad, something in between their chest and the bar. So when they come down, they're not utilizing that full range of motion, so they're building that part of the lift where they struggle the most. It could be done the same way with like a pin. So you unrack the bar, bring it down to the pins, and then drive up from those pins. And the reason that is super beneficial is the range of motion is shorter, so you can work in loads that are heavier or weights that are heavier than you could perform that full range of motion in. So you can really drive like the neurological input and the tension, overall tension, especially like a bench press, that you're gonna be putting into that bar. So when you get back to a full repetition, it'll feel easier even at heavier weights later on. The next place that partial range of motions are very popular is with bodybuilding. So we've probably all seen someone performing, let's say like let's go back to the bicep curl. A bicep curl where someone's like on the mat or something and they're performing the ranges of motion like this. And that's because that's putting a lot of tension solely on the bicep there. And that's where we're going to be the strongest in that movement. Back to that example, if I'm on a pad here, the hardest part of that's going to be that initial range of motion, that's starting from that fully locked out position. So when we're doing that partial rep, we're keeping the constant tension on the bicep versus spreading it out across the body and fully locking out in a full range of motion. So while partial repetitions are extremely beneficial and can drive a very sought after training stimulus, you don't want most of your sessions to be comprised of partial repetitions. We should always be working towards building and strengthening full ranges of motion. That's not only going to lead to greater performance, athleticism, strength, ability to have more muscle, but just overall well-being. We don't want to be stuck in shortened ranges of motion, for instance. So where's two places where this can be put in? So like I said, most of our sessions should be comprised of full ranges of motion. But two examples, the most common examples are, let's go back to that power lifter or someone who just wants to get stronger in general. And let's use the box squat as an example. So someone's squatting down, doesn't really matter the height of the box. It could be a tall box, a 90-degree or a half range of motion box, or even a low box. That could still technically be considered a partial range of motion if it's not all the way down, but close enough to it. This is gonna be to help create more drive out of the hole, being able to control the weight even more. And let's say this person is doing 4 sets of 5 repetitions of a box squat. So they could start their session after their warm-up with this, and let's say it's not supersetted with anything, it's just the box squat. So they do their 5 repetitions, and then they rest. And then they accumulate 4 sets of that, and then they can move on to more full range of motion lifting for their legs, no matter what their next exercise could be. So that's a great way to accumulate sets and work towards building in a specific exercise itself. The next way that partial repetitions are typically thrown in is like with muscle building or bodybuilding kind of workouts. And this would be at the very end of like your last set of a specific exercise or a specific part of a muscle that you want to grow the most. So let's go and use the example of a leg extension. Let's say you are doing 3 sets of 15 to 20 reps of a leg extension. It's your last set. You get to those 15 or 20 reps and you still have a little bit more to give, but not in a full range of motion. You wouldn't be able to perform another rep of that. So you start doing half rep range of motion, so half the full range. And then all of a sudden you're able to pound out like another 10 more reps. And then as that gets more difficult and you can't perform that even more, you could even do like quarter rep of that leg extension, really driving out like an extra 5 reps. And that's a great way to really burn out the end of a session or the last set of a specific muscle group that is lagging or you want to improve upon more intently. And those are going to be the 2 biggest ways to implement partial ranges of motion in your training. Like I said at the start of this, most of that training should be comprised of full ranges of motion. Hopefully this video has given you some ideas and a better understanding of partial repetitions, when you can throw them in, where and why into your own exercise or training program. If you have any other questions about partial reps, leave them in the comments below, or if you'd like to see another concept or anything like that broken down in this sort of manner, please comment that down below as well. And if you haven't already subscribed, please do so. Thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.